What's up, guys? Welcome to Champion Picks. I'm Jared Champion, and this is our NFL 2016 Week 9 Fantasy Football Show. This week, I'm actually matchups, some players to pick up from here on out, and maybe some trades to go for. First off, let's take a look at how we did with our pickups last week. We've got, starting off with Brandon LaFell. He actually had a terrible week. I don't know what happened to LaFell in Cincinnati, but it was like all of a sudden Tyler Boyd, the rookie, was like in his position this week. Boyd caught like 6 balls on 9 targets. AJ Green had a great game, but LaFell was like non-existent, so that ended up not panning out for us. JJ, they were on bye. CJ Fedorowicz, he caught another touchdown this week for the Texans, so I think he's on 4 touchdowns in 4 games. Guys, if CJ is still out there, go ahead and pick him up. He's a tight end that's just like slipping underneath everybody's radar. I think he's still under 60% or 50% owned in standard leagues. And then Cordell Patterson, I'm actually recording this before the Monday night game, but the Vikings play tonight. I really think Cordell's going to have a lot of touches tonight because they've got to find a way to generate offense. The Vikings have scored 3 offensive touchdowns in the past 4 games. And Beasley had a terrible fumble in the first half of the Jacksonville game. He got pulled, so that pick kind of fell through. But then Russell Shepard, 1% owned, ended up being the best wide receiver in fantasy for Tampa Bay this week. He only had 12 points, but he still scored more than Mike Evans. So Russell Shepard was actually a great pickup if you had to use a streaming wide receiver this week. Alright guys, we're going to move on to our Week 9 pickups. First, in the bottom here, Tim Hightower for the Saints. Hightower got called up because Mark Ingram was fumbling the ball a lot. He took the chance and he ran with it. And Nolan's coach, Sean Payton, is one of those guys that just does not care. He doesn't care. If you can't hang on the ball, you're going to be pulled out of the game. So with Mark Ingram on the bench, for now, nothing else out of New Orleans has said anything other. It looks like Tim Hightower could be the guy going into Week 9. J.J. Nelson from Arizona, he had 8 catches for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you can't get any more clear other than Coach Bruce Arians came in and said J.J. Nelson was now a starting wide receiver. They had Malcolm Floyd, but he had a lot of injuries and he was inconsistent, and I think with that and J.J. Nelson having the breakout game, that's why Coach Arians came out and made that statement. And then Chandrick West, running back for Kansas City, with how the injured backfield is for Kansas City, with Jamal Charles going down early and then the backup for Charles going down, and now Chandrick West took some carries this week, had some good plays, and in the past, Chandrick West has been usable in deeper leagues, so you kind of know what you get out of him, and he's going to do pretty good, I think, in lieu of Kansas City's, I wouldn't say lack thereof scoring because they've been scoring better, but when they play better defenses, there's not a whole lot of fantasy going on there. And then Tyreek Hill, wide receiver for Kansas City. It's hard not to say something about Hill because he's had 2 games in a row with touchdowns, and the first game was 1 catch, 1 touchdown. Well, he comes back in the game after that and catches 5 out of 6 targets for 49 yards and a touchdown. I don't know if Tyreek Hill is someone's would be worth rostering right now, but he's definitely somebody that you want to take a look at. And then I break down the best and worst matchups, in my opinion, for the fantasy playoffs. So starting at the top and then going down, these are just some honorable mentions. I've got some Halloween colors, trying to make it look like candy corn. But Chicago Bears have a decent matchup. They're not that great of a fantasy team, but they look pretty good against Minnesota tonight on Monday. It's halftime right now when I'm recording this, and I want to say they're up 13-3. So Minnesota actually is playing bad, I would say, but the Bears are still able to move the ball on that good defense. So the Bears in Week 14, you've got at Detroit versus Green Bay and versus Washington. Green Bay and Washington usually have good defenses, but this year they haven't been anything to call home about, so this is an honorable mention. And then we got the Detroit Lions as another honorable mention. They're playing versus Chicago at New York Giants. And then if you look at how Dallas' schedule lines up, this game can mean nothing to them, the very last game of the regular season. So Dallas could be not playing for anything. And then we have Minnesota. They play Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Green Bay. And like I said, Green Bay's defense is nothing to call home about. The only thing that's bad about this is they're in Green Bay. But Minnesota usually plays well in that matchup. historically. And then going on to our preferable and favorable matchups, we have the Chargers. They're playing Carolina, Oakland, and Cleveland the last 3 games for the fantasy playoffs. Guys, the Chargers look really good. If you're able to grab some Chargers for the playoffs, hint Melvin Gordon, maybe Phillip Rivers, these guys are going to have some favorable matchups and be able to score a lot of points in these last 3 fantasy playoff games. And then same thing for Oakland Raiders. The only one that looks kind of tough is at Kansas City, but Raiders play really good at home, and their offense is kind of been matchup proof. We'll see how this Sunday plays out with Denver, but yeah, I still like this. At Kansas City, at San Diego, and versus Indianapolis, who can't stop anybody. And then my favorite would be Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're playing versus New Orleans, which is going to be a shootout, at Dallas. This game, being second to last, could also mean nothing for Dallas, and they could not be playing all their starters. And then at New Orleans again, which is going to be another shootout. So Mike Evans owners, be careful for trades this week. Be careful for people coming after Mike Evans, because this is the type of year, or the time of year, when fantasy owners start looking at big-time wide receivers who have the best matchups. So you might be getting some Julio Jones trades thrown at you for Mike Evans, or other top-tier, top 3 wide receivers that kind of match up the same as him. But Mike Evans is a really favorable lineup, or a really favorable playoff schedule. And then let's look at the bad side, the Green Bay Packers. Seattle, the Chicago game's not that bad, but then Minnesota, 2 top-tier defenses. Jacksonville, they scored some trash time points this week, but if you look, Jacksonville has Minnesota, great defense. Houston, good defense. At Houston, division game. Tennessee, division game. Underrated defense, still a good defense. And Jacksonville's offense is not that good anyways. So I like the Jags fantasy playoff schedule. And then we've got the Dallas Cowboys. They play at Giants versus Tampa Bay and versus Detroit. The reason why I put this up here is because week 14 at the Giants, divisional game. The Giants usually play them really well. But after that, the Cowboys might have already clinched home field. Seeing how they're top of the NFC right now, and the Vikings are down on Monday night. I'm not saying the Vikings are going to lose, but they don't have as good as offense as the Cowboys, and their favor is not as their schedule is not as favorable going into the second half of the season. So I think the Cowboys will have a decent game against the Giants, and they could potentially have great games versus Tampa Bay and Detroit. But like I said earlier, these games could not mean that much to the Cowboys. They could have already clinched. And then let's go with the Titans. Denver, KC, and then at Jacksonville, which is a division game. Denver and KC, great defenses, and then at a division opponent. I would steer clear of having fantasy players that you think should carry you, like DeMarco Murray through the playoffs. You might want to see about trading him. Maybe getting an equally good tiered running back, because you got to say Denver's run defense, Kansas City's run defense. You might not make it to play Jacksonville in the fantasy Super Bowl. And then we look at the Dolphins, which could have the worst one. They've got Arizona, New York Jets, and at Buffalo. I mean, those are all 3 great run defenses, and Tannehill's nothing to call home about. Jay Ajayi is the guy that seemed to have sparks of life for the Dolphins offense, and with those 3 great run defenses, Ajayi might not be a guy that you want to look forward to in the playoffs. And then Seattle Seahawks. Their opponents will be at Lambeau, versus the Rams, which we've already seen them play a low-scoring game, and versus Arizona, where we saw them tie 6. So Seattle is another one that I don't like going into the playoffs. So these 2 lists might give you some insight on how you feel about who you want to trade for or who you're trading away. You really want to start gearing up toward the playoffs, especially if you're in a top-tier position to do so. Like if you are first or second place, maybe a 1-2 loss team right now, and you know that you feel comfortable with maybe getting rid of some bench players, or maybe some bench players can come in and play, and you can trade some of your studs to get some more favorable matchups in the end of the year. Anyways, I wouldn't think too much into this. This is just some deeper level fantasy stuff. A lot of the times when you make a lot of roster moves, you can really mess yourself up and you regret it later. But this is just for some people that are into deeper moves and really thinking ahead. I really like looking at this because I've played the same league for 3 or 4 years with the same guys and always make the playoffs and seem to get beat like first round. I think I've made it out of the first round once. So this year, running into second place in that league, started looking at matchups and started looking at who I wanted to trade and who I wanted to go for. That being said, guys, I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel. You can click there to subscribe. I'll have my DraftKings video up tomorrow. As of right now, we have a lineup that's in the 140s, 150s maybe. I'll have to check, but yeah, I know it's at least in the 140s. Hopefully, we can get a few more plays out of Alshon Jeffrey tonight and make that 160, 170 point lineup. That would be great for scoring. Anyways, guys, check that DraftKings out tomorrow, and then as the week goes on, I'll put some more videos in the thumbnail for you to check out. I'll have my college and NFL picks. This week I went 5-2 combined against the spread, so we had another positive week, and we're on a positive year. I think we're up 4 or 6 units on the year so far, which isn't anything crazy, but it's still good. So keeping positive on that. Have a good week.